Today, we're gonna advance to the blue, amber, mythic, or right or wrong stage. And as I may have mentioned, Habermas famously, hopefully said, the next higher level of consciousness always solves the problems of the previous levels, but eventually creates problems that increase in complexity. And so today we will see how the amber level solves the problems of the egocentric level, the mythic level, and then how the rational level solves the problems of the mythic level. And as a little recap, here is the pure survival level that we explored last time, and how this shows up in our adult life. So we don't only want to be in the history of this, but how this still lives in us through mainly our reptilian brain, our instincts, our survival instincts, our sexual procreative instincts, how that shows up in our adult lives, specifically when we regress under stress to that level, and also what we project on a romantic partner, which is of course very important for our training here, how this shows up in our love relationships. And then we advanced to this magic level, which in our childhood is maybe from 2 to 7 or 8. We lived in some kind of magical world, and we were seeking safety in the context of our family, and historically in the context of our tribe. And then we went up the next rung in the ladder, which we developed, which is the egocentric level, where we, for the first time, claim some independence. Some people become rebellious against their parents or their environment. And it's all about being powerful, exerting yourself, independence, creativity, spontaneity, being uninhibited, carefree, and open, but also setting boundaries, right? So this is the stage where it is all about me. And for most people, that at one point no longer works. It's just very hard to constantly fight against everybody else. And it's very hard to co-create healthy relationships at this level. And so historically, about 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, this new level emerged when people invented agriculture and created city-states, when the population was growing, specifically here in the Mediterranean, where I live right now. And people needed rules. Men started to own property. They had their own land. And so money was invented. Right? So this stage emerged historically with agriculture. Monotheistic religions and laws were established that brought basically stability to this previously more tribal, chaotic, often moving around tribes. They were nomadic in a way, so people settled down. And also the idea that there was a future, people became more aware of their future and of death, and they wondered more what will happen after death. So religion started to give answers to that, and hierarchies developed. So there were certain leaders that had mostly mythic laws and rules that put everybody into their place. And in modern relationships, we see that through the assignment of clear gender roles. So for the first time at this stage, men take more responsibility in the public sphere for food production, as we see in this ancient picture here, even though there is also a woman who, of course, also worked in the fields, but the more strenuous hard work was mainly performed by men, and women had more time to be at home and take care of the children and take care of the men when they came home. And so patriarchy, the classical form of patriarchy, emerged in that stage, and which we see here in the movie The Tree of Life. And the relationship books now explain that men and women are fundamentally different, like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And by understanding how we're different and learning how to deal with that, to accept these differences, instead of arguing over them and fighting, at this level, we can then, according to these books, co-create healthy relationships. And we also have here, get hip to the patriarchy, we have the Pope, and we have the Republican Party or conservative parties in countries that often are very based still in religious values and morals, etc., etc. So that's the stage I want you to explore today. Did you transition from the red stage into the mythic stage? How did your relationships change in that stage? How did your worldviews change in this stage? Maybe how did your body change? How did you maybe differently dress? Maybe you started to live in a different form, have a different job, things like that. What changed in all the 4 dimensions of our being? And then you may have transitioned at some point out of this mythic amber perspective into what we call the rational perspective worldview. And here we move out of these mythic belief system into modern science. So that emerged, that stage, around 500 years ago with the Enlightenment period, with famous people like Kepler, Copernicus, Newton, Galileo, Columbus, Descartes on the philosopher side, and later Immanuel Kant, which were all proponents of free will for the people, that everybody could express their own worldviews, and that people started to take a scientific worldview instead of a mythic worldview. We also see a separation now where science becomes its own discipline and morals becomes its own discipline, and aesthetics and art becomes its own discipline, and it's no longer just controlled by the church or by people, by kings and lords, etc., who would define what's true and good and beautiful. Now that's breaking up into different disciplines. And so this is all about objectivity, pursuing the good life, liberty, freedom, democracy, etc. And we will look at a little bit more deeply into that in a few minutes. And here we see now relationship books, they start to take a very pragmatic, a very scientific view. So a very famous and great book is Why We Love by Helen Fisher, who takes an anthropological perspective on love, right? That we're social animals and what kind of hormones get released when we fall in love, and why this is important to our nature, and also why are we so heartbroken when we get left, or when a relationship ends in a painful way. So she takes that perspective. And then we also see for the first time psychotherapy entering the field of relationships. And there's the fairly effective and well-known imago therapy. And so the relationship books take on a more psychological perspective and move away from this men are this way and women are this way. Then in movies, we see that really nicely in Love Actually, which is a very orange stage 5 rational movie about love relationships, and it's complicated. Also Eat, Pray, Love is a very orange book, and Passionate Marriage. And representatives in our modern world of this stage, we could say, are people like Einstein and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs, everybody who ushered in this modern worldview of mainly material things and material well-being, and the pursuit of freedom and liberty and happiness. So that's the 5th stage. And these are the two stages, the mythic and the rational, which I want you to explore today. And we want to add a little bit more of complexity today by looking at how this transformation took place. So we started out in the archaic stage where usually on a pure survival level today, there are not many relationships who are on that level, but we have some people who are on the magic level still as adults and co-create relationships there. And as long as the problems in the exterior world specifically, which you see here on the right side, the green arrow going up, as long as the challenges are not greater than the tools or the skills we have available to deal with the challenges, everything is basically fine if both people are at this stage. But as the challenges grow higher, then the tools that we have available, we hit a wall. And so sometimes people say our relationship hit a wall. They literally say that, and we feel we're really getting stuck. We're not moving forward, and it's not a very happy stage. And then hopefully this transformation will take place. So we cannot break through the wall like horizontally. The only way out is the way up. And we transform, and then we get to the next higher stage, which solves the problems of the previous stage. And slowly we develop the skills on this stage. And so in the middle phase, we have then usually the tools developed to deal with the challenges that are less than our level of consciousness, our tools, our cognitive complexity or mental complexity, until the challenges increase again and we hit a wall again, and then transformation takes place. We get to the next stage. For a few years, life is usually great. We have new friends, maybe we have a new partner, a new job, a new home. We dress differently. We're just living in a way in a different bubble or in a different world, so to speak, that we create around us. And so everything is fine. And then most of us probably at one point hit the wall again on the mythic level, and then this transformation took place to the rational level. And if you exhausted the tools to deal with the challenges at the rational level, so that emerge in the post-rational or postmodern stage, then again you went through this transformation. So today we want to also focus in our conversation about these transformations and the way they take place in a more precise way comes from spiral dynamics. And so when we are in this stage of, right, where the red arrow is, the spiral dynamics calls that the alpha stage, where everything is okay, basically, specifically here in the middle of the red arrows. So this is the alpha stage, everything is okay. And then at some point, for most of us, things started to go wrong at any level that we had reached, or the highest level we had reached at the time. Things started to go wrong, and they call that the beta condition. And then there are two general paths how what happens then is either what they call revolutionary change, where we fall sort of like into a dark night of the soul, or they call it the gamma trap. We feel trapped, everything falls apart, our relationship falls apart, maybe the job falls apart, maybe we got into trouble with the law or with substance abuse or financially, maybe health-wise. So there can be many reasons where our life that was great for a while may just have fallen apart and things go wrong, and we fall into this gamma trap and everything collapses around us. So if that happened to you at some point in the transition, from one stage to the next, you may want to share this with your partner. And then hopefully, not for everyone, but for most people, some kind of breakthrough event happens. Maybe we meet a new partner or a new teacher, or read a book, or we get a new job, or we decide to go into the military or join a religion or a spiritual community. We find something that opens this door to new possibilities. They haven't emerged yet, but somebody kind of helps us to go through this breakthrough, or we start to meditate and do deep inner work, or we have a therapist who helps us to break through, or a coach. So there's many paths, many things happen, and maybe you can then share that a little bit. If you went in this path, what was this breakthrough? What caused you to transform? For me, for example, that was starting to listening to Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and then meeting Eckhart Tolle and meditating and going to retreats with him. So that I was for a while in this trap here, digging myself in a hole. And as I sometimes say, if you dig yourself in a hole, stop digging. And so that was for me, so like this breakthrough transformation took place maybe within a year or so. But sometimes people also very slowly transform from an earlier stage to the next higher stage. And this transformation sometimes takes years, where it's not a steep climb, but it's more of a slope, as here shown in this evolutionary change. And eventually we find ourselves at the next level. We made it, right? And we're back to an alpha fit. And then we're basically back here on the left side. Everything is okay. And we think that's going to be it. Life's going to be great. I left all these problems from the previous stages behind me. I got everything figured out and worked out. And for some people, they stay for the rest of their life in whatever higher stage they have reached, may it be the mythic stage or the rational stage or the pluralistic or the integral stage. But for some people, things start to go wrong again, and they go again through this process of transformation, either through revolutionary change or through evolutionary change. And for relationships, of course, the challenge is often that, let's say we meet someone when we're on the mythic level, and that other person is on the mythic level as well, and we do some learning and healing together, but pretty much, things are okay. And then if one partner evolves and eventually hits the wall here and starts this transformation process, and the other partner doesn't go along, then that creates often relationship problems that cannot be solved. So one person wants to solve the relationship challenges from this level, and also would expect their partner to meet them on this higher level that they have reached, or later level. If you don't like the word higher and lower, you can also say later level. And even if, especially if the other person keeps growing, let's say to the pluralistic level, and the partner is still at the mythic level, at one point there is so much tension that the relationship becomes unworkable, and one of them will then end the relationship. We often say when the pain of staying becomes bigger than the fear of leaving, then usually the relationship is over. And a lot of people stay for a long time in relationships where they're not really met by their partner any longer, because the fear of leaving is still greater than the pain of staying.